Welcome to Transform Now, a podcast focused on intelligent automation and brought to you by SS&C Blue Prism. On this program, we talk about how organizations globally are rethinking the way they operate, utilizing process orchestration and AI-enabled digital workers to free up humans to do the work that matters most. We also share insights and tips on how you can embrace this new way of working and unleash your full potential. Let's get into the show.
Hello everyone, Brad Hairston here. Welcome to Transform Now. Today, Darshan Shah has joined the podcast. Darshan is a director in automation at ISG and SS&C Blue Prism delivery partner. Darshan and I will be discussing a really interesting and compelling automation solution that they have pre-built and taken to market. It's around supplier onboarding. Darshan, welcome. Why don't you tell everyone a little bit more about yourself?
Hey, Brad. Thank you for the introduction. Hello, everyone. This is Darshan Shah. I'm a director, as Brad said, at ISG Automation. I've been here about 8 years, and as part of my journey with ISG, I worked with multiple clients, helped them deploy quite a few automations, set up their COEs, build out robust automation programs, and just been involved in the weeds. So happy to be here, Brad, and happy to talk about this new intelligent supplier solution we've put together.
Fantastic. And Darshan, ISG has been a partner of Blue Prisms for quite a while. For those who aren't as familiar with your company, can you describe it and also talk about what you guys are doing in the whole intelligent automation area?
Absolutely, Brad. ISG is a global technology research and advisory firm. We work in multiple industries. When automation started back 8 years ago, a large part of our services involved advisory services. So we help clients figure out what is automation, how do they go about trying to implement it within their organization. But as the industries evolved, it's now more focused on deploying automations and being their partner to scale as and when needed, bringing in additional new automation technology, like some of the stuff that we'll be talking about today. So that is what our role is. And again, we've served more than 150 plus clients within the automation space.
Well, Darshan, you and your colleagues have developed a pre-built automation solution around the supplier onboarding process. You shared that with me a few weeks ago. I've taken a good look at it. I think it's really interesting, and I'd like to spend this podcast just talking about it. Let me first ask you, what made this such a compelling automation candidate, the supplier onboarding process?
Yeah, but good question. When we talk about automation and we work on this with clients, there's not one client that does not have a supply chain or a procurement department. But if you think about it, every organization out there works with multiple vendors, multiple suppliers, and be it retail, healthcare, technology, every industry out there, they always have someone that they have to deal with. And that's why we said, okay, if we want to build something that can be applied to a large set of organizations, supply chain is probably the one we start with. So obvious reasons, with all of this put together, we said, okay, let's build a solution first for the supply chain field. And that's how we came up with the automation or the intelligent supply chain automation that we've put together so far.
In one of the more manually intensive and error-prone processes in most organizations, I'm sure.
Yes. So let's talk about that, right? When you think about supply chain and when you're looking for an ideal candidate for automation, you're looking for something that's transaction heavy, right? That's where supply chain, of course, is always. You always are dealing with multiple suppliers, multiple requests, a lot of data coming in. The other aspects, of course, of this solution that we've built is trying to work on a process that is external facing. You have organizations or you have data coming in from outside the organization. Same thing applies here. Again, you've got multiple suppliers, vendors constantly having new information, new updates, contracts, all of that come in. The other aspect of this is being able to complete the requests that come in from your suppliers and vendors on time. If not, yeah, there's a negative impact to it. There's either a cost impact, a relationship impact, something that has a negative downstream impact to your process. And that's where, again, the supply chain process is a
Hmm.
good candidate for this.
Yeah.
All aspects put together almost feels like it's the best one we could start with.
Hmm. That makes sense. So walk us through what this process typically looks like in your clients.
So when I talk about the solution and the process we have, the solution targets updates and requests coming in from vendors and suppliers. First of all, it's generally when we look at our clients, it's all email based. There's either a
Hmm.
distribution list of some sort with multiple emails coming from different suppliers, vendors. When you look at behind the scenes, it's always something's come in, either someone from the client side understands what the request is, they don't understand it, they have to go back and ask the person who sent it if what they said is what they understood it to be. A lot of times it's unstructured. Someone has to sit down, figure out what the email is, and then convert it into a format or a structure that could be understood internally within the organization. It's also a lot of possibility for things to fall off because now it's
Hmm.
all email based, right? So something comes in, let's say Susie or someone's looking at it today, they put it on their list of things to do later in the day, they forget it, they go on emergency leave, they go on vacation, it's all forgotten. And then when she comes back or he comes back, right, it's probably on the bottom of their list, never get to it. And the worst part is no one gets to know that it was missed until it's very late. Either the vendor didn't get their payment, they shipped to the wrong address, all kinds of operational impact. So that's why these are the kind of things our solution helps to solve. It looks at the process end to end, tracks it right from the moment something comes in.
Yeah, let's go there next. Why don't you talk about just how your team automated the process and also enhanced it?
When you started the process, the first step, of course, is process mapping, right? We understand what the existing process is. We have a solution. We configure it so that it's easier to map it with the existing process the client has. So we start off with first setting up this whole web-based portal. Again, it's easy, low to no code. So it's easy for us to set up, easy for the client to manage on an ongoing basis. It can take in any requests that come in, help structure those requests to the internal teams. That way, there's really no confusion on what's being asked by the vendor or the supplier. Then there's also the process of then putting all of them into your process workflow. This way, the workflow ensures each and every request that comes in is tracked right from the start to the end. There's integrity within each request that comes in. So no data is ever lost. There is trackability of each request. This way it ensures that you know exactly how many have come in, how many are being processed, how many are stuck somewhere and someone needs to take care of them. So all in all, we look at the data requests coming in, the process for that, map it out. We also map out the existing process the client has. So when a request comes in, again, within the client's organization, there's multiple people who touch that request. It needs to go through multiple approval workflows, and there can be all kinds of nuances on, where it goes, whom it goes to, why it goes. So all of that needs to be mapped and
Hmm.
then set up within the process workflow capability. So we definitely do that. And then towards the end, any repetitive activity within this process is also something we would build automations around so it makes it easier and more efficient for the current team to perform their work.
Hmm.
And eventually, once all the requests that have come in, they're approved, they're good to be submitted within the client's ERP system. We build out that automation. And there's always the back end of any transaction, which is summarizing what happened and sending that off to the requester and everyone else involved who touched that transaction. That's another piece of this.
Hmm.
We are able to bring GenAI capabilities, which I'm sure we'll touch upon in today's session. But
Hmm.
hopefully that gives a good flavor of what we do with respect to any process.
Yeah, definitely. When you showed this solution to me, one of the things that really stuck out to me was how many different automation capabilities your team used to cover every aspect of this whole process. Let's talk about process orchestration. What specifically made process orchestration a necessary part of this solution?
Yeah, a very good question, Brad. As I said, we work with clients for the last 8 years building automations and RPA automation specifically. What we found is in those 8 years, when we build RPA automations, we only target a certain section of the process that's repetitive, needs to be done multiple times.
Mm-hmm.
They come in, build a bot that can automate that transaction, and everything before and after that needs to be done by someone manually. What we find is while we can automate certain pieces of a process, organizations are looking for the ability to digitize and transform the entire process end to end. And this is where process orchestration is very relevant, because when you start looking at an end to end process, you're trying to transform and make it more digitized. There's always multiple touch points. There's many people, many groups of organizations within a client that are touching that transaction. And it's critical to ensure that all of that is managed through one end-to-end process management layer. This is
Mm-hmm.
where process orchestration comes in. We use process orchestration to ensure that each group that's touching that transaction is tracked. You have the ability to go back exactly and see who has done what on that transaction. You can leave comments, you can leave feedback, or you can even have the ability to say, person A did this, person B requested additional information, went back to person A, they added that information by talking to the client, whatever. But that's, I feel like, the most critical component to ensure there's integrity of the transaction within each organization.
Yeah, clearly the value broadens quite a bit when you go beyond just the automated steps, but you start looking at all the things that humans are touching from various departments. Besides RPA and process orchestration, what are some of the other technologies or capabilities that you used to make sure you were making this process as efficient as possible?
One is the web portal that we already spoke about, right? That ensures there's external facing. There's IDP, or technology that can help extract data from
Mm-hmm.
document. That's
Mm-hmm.
part of our end-to-end solution that ensures, again, if there's documents coming in, we again don't need people to go through each and every piece of that document. There's ability to extract information automatically from it.
Mm-hmm.
And also, as part of this integrated solution, users don't have to switch between different applications. It's all
Mm-hmm.
part of your process orchestration layer. The process orchestration layer can help you see what has been extracted from the document, make corrections, and provide that feedback back to your IDP layer, the intelligent document processing layer. So you don't have to work through different systems. The other technologies I was going to refer to was, one is GenAI. Again, when we look at GenAI, I know there's a lot of buzz around this and everybody wants to use it. But we
Mm-hmm.
started off with, here's a problem, here's how we will solve it. And as part of that solution, if GenAI is relevant, then we would use it. So in this case, it was more of, okay, I can use GenAI to summarize what the transaction was, what we
Mm-hmm.
did, what was processed, and then again, given always doubts on is GenAI really 100% accurate, we
Mm-hmm.
were able to create a layer of governance where before anything goes out externally, it's always validated by someone within the client organization to say, yes, is this correct? Is this exactly what happened? Good. And they
Mm-hmm.
approve it, and then it gets sent out to the end client. That's another piece of this technology. So you have this entire process, you have all these technologies working with each other, making it seamless for the user to work through the process. But
Mm-hmm.
question is always going to be, how do you monitor this? How do you
Right.
ensure that everything's working correctly? If something needs to be notified, how do I look at what's going on? So if I'm like the manager of this, the supply team, right, in my organization, I do want to know what requests have come in, who's working on which one. Are there any that, let's say I have an SLA of getting all these completed in 10 days? Are there any about to be close to that 10 days, but are in jeopardy of missing my service level? What if
Mm-hmm.
it's day 8 and some of those requests are still in like the early stages of the process? I need to make sure either I have eyes on it, I have someone assigned to it who can fast track it, whatever needs to be done. to get that through my process quicker, right? So like I feel like the metrics and analytics dashboard is
Mm-hmm.
one of the key components of this solution that
Yeah.
really brings it all together.
Hmm. You've mentioned several things that relate to governance, and I wondered if you could maybe expand on that a little bit more, talk about the governance and also the benefit tracking components of this solution. Those are obviously very important to companies that are going down this path. So tell us more.
Yeah. Yeah. So when we talk about governance, right, in today's complex scenarios, we already have automations. As I said, last 8 years, we've been working with clients to build automations. Even though it's still being looked upon as automation is a separate piece, people within the organization, separate piece, they all have their own tasks and it's all being treated separately. With this solution, we are bringing it all together. We are creating one single dashboard view. So
Mm-hmm.
you have your regular team and your digital workers both consolidated into one end-to-end process view that can tell the manager or supervisor, here's what's happening, right? Here's how many transactions are with the person. Here's how many transactions are with the bots. Here's how, if the bots are backlogged, how far back are they? Do I need to pull in someone else to pick up the bots activity just because we can't manage that volume? Or I need to pull in more bots to quickly come in and pick up the work.
Mm-hmm.
That's one part of the governance. The other pieces, of course, is you can look at existing metrics or leading metrics to say, here's what's happening today. Here's where I'm behind. But you can also, given this system, this solution can track all your transactions and data. You can go back to last month and say, in the last month, here's all the parts of my process that took the most amount of time. Then that's
Mm-hmm.
a process problem that I need to solve, right? Or I could look at the data and say, here's the individuals who took the most time to solve certain pieces of my process.
Mm-hmm.
Then it's more of a training question that I need to go back and say, okay, do I need to train these resources in these specific areas so they can be more efficient at what they do? So a lot of things behind governance and metrics that can work. And this is something we've thought upfront about. It's not an
Mm-hmm.
add-on or an afterthought where I put a process and then I figure out what I need to do to improve it. But continuous improvement is built into the solution. So it definitely helps from a governance perspective.
Beautiful. So Darshan, how would you sum up the overall value proposition of this solution that you really want companies to understand?
Yeah. So the way I would say it is actually, I would also like to mention a few other things regarding the solution. One is even though we've started with the supplier solution as one of the most relevant ones, we are definitely working on additional use cases. So as soon as we brought this out to the market, started discussing this with prospects and clients, we immediately got requests, hey, can I use this for other use cases? And what we've identified is any process that is heavy in terms of transactions is SLA sensitive and has external facing data coming in with multiple parties involved within the organization that have to touch and work on it.
Mm-hmm.
That's a good candidate for this solution. We of course start with supplier management, but then you also have employee onboarding. That's a good fit for this. We have folks within our healthcare space who come back and say, hey, can we use this for like patient onboarding as well, which, is a great fit again, because there's multiple different areas for it. Some of our retailers have come back and said, can we use this for our royalty membership management programs? We're like, yeah, absolutely. Because that again is low value, heavy transaction, definitely something we can bring in. The one thing I'd like clients to take away or prospects to take away from this is if you're looking at a process to bring in automation efficiencies, so you can reduce the amount of labor needed to do the same work, but also look at it from the point of view of this is a critical process for my organization. It's SLA heavy. It needs to be done within a certain time. There's a negative impact if I can't finish it. You don't have a good way to track your processes today. All of these pain points that we would be happy to solve with this solution and walk our clients and prospects to here's what we can do for you.
Mm, that's good. So for companies that are looking to automate this process, do you have a gauge as to how much time you can save them in terms of leveraging the solution that you guys have already built versus starting from scratch? I mean, how much faster can they do the automation in your estimation?
Absolutely, but I'm glad you're pinning me down for some numbers here. So I would say if you're looking at efficiencies in terms of labor, we can say you could save labor in terms of around 30 to 45%, but you could easily reduce the amount of effort needed to perform a transaction by that number. But that's
Mhm.
not the only critical number that I would call out over here. If you're having your team today take, say, 10 days to complete a transaction end to end, that's another piece that you can reduce significantly. So turnaround
Mhm.
time on requests from external parties, that is an easy reduction of, another 50 to 70%. What that
Mhm.
means is your end clients, whoever you're serving, it's your vendors, your employees, your contractors, whoever, you're able to reduce the turnaround time to their requests significantly by around 50 to 70%. So I think those are the two numbers I'd like anyone who's hearing this take away from this discussion.
Okay. And Darshan, is ISG willing to run and maintain this solution on behalf of companies in a managed services model, if you will?
Absolutely. Actually, Pat, I'm glad you asked this question because this is where we market a little bit. So yes, we do provide managed services to our clients in multiple different areas. Automation is a primary one of them. So we even today provide this as a managed service solution. And again, the support varies. Some clients will come back and say, hey, can we do this 8x5? Because that's the only duration I need this to run for. And the others will find that it's super critical for them and they run this 24/7 or somewhere in between. All of them work. So we definitely uh, provide a managed service option for this and can customize it based on our client requirements.
Okay. Is this potentially the future for ISG in terms of bringing more of
Yes.
these pre-built automation solutions to market versus getting in with a customer that's starting from scratch and starting to do one or two automations at a time?
I'd say we'd like it to be. We've seen some initial success. We've seen clients want solutions more than automations, right? They want something that works. They want something that can solve their problem
Mhm.
and not necessarily start off with, hey, I want to automate this. They want to improve something that's running. And that's where we view this as a solution that can solve issues within the organization versus just build an automation that can take away some level of manual effort. So
Okay.
yes, we are seeing this as a trend and we do hope to
Mhm.
continue and happy to customize this solution if there are very unique or specific demands from our clients
Sure.
in different industries.
Yeah. Any examples of solution areas where you think ISG may go next? Just some of the big pain points that most companies deal with?
Yeah, yeah. I think next focus has definitely been patient onboarding because again, healthcare is an industry we work with very closely and we've
Mhm.
had a few requests come in on, hey, can we use this with patients? So
Mhm.
that is a definite use case we have been working on. And again, what I'd say is if it's a use case we haven't covered, it would take us maybe 2 to 3 weeks more to
Mhm.
customize this to a use case that we haven't seen so far.
Okay.
So I would encourage anyone who's listening to this to come and say, hey, here's the use case we'd like to solve. Can you do it? And
Mhm.
let us take a stab at it.
Excellent. While you were describing the solution, you mentioned a couple times how GenAI comes into play to summarize the request that's being moved through the process. Could you maybe just wrap us up by talking a little bit more about what ISG is doing with GenAI, specifically in combination with digital workers? Sounds like this is not a one-off. This is something you guys are doing pretty regularly.
Yeah, but absolutely. No conversation is without Gen AI today, right? Everyone wants to use it. So we've looked at this in a way where we still focused on the business problem before we focus on the solution. The question
Mhm.
still always is, what is it that we want to try and solve?
Right.
And if the solution is Gen AI to an extent, given the capability that exists today, then yes, we would go ahead and leverage it. Some use cases, right, where we've been able to use GenAI, of course, as I said, is summarizing in the current solution that we are talking about. There have been cases with clients where we are looking at automating help desk support activities, right?
Mm-hmm.
Again, over there, it's pretty easy to use GenAI to figure out, yes, what the problem is, yes, what the client wants to solve, and then we can leverage GenAI to convert the unstructured problem to something more structured for a bot to consume, or the other way, where the bot's completed its activity and then summarize what the bot did in a human-friendly language back to the requester. Again, multiple different use cases. We've had some cases where there was a request to use not exactly GenAI, but in the context of creating text, but generative AI for forecasting using AI models of different sorts. Again, where we use automation to put together initial numbers and then
Mm-hmm.
use GenAI to create forecasting models that can be published back to the users. So many different use cases, but as always, it's always about what problem we want to solve before we focus on what technology we use to solve it.
Very good. Well, Darshan, thank you so much for coming on the podcast to talk about this very impressive pre-built supplier onboarding solution. This is certainly one thing that is, as you said, critical to every company, and to give companies the ability to automate as much of it as possible through this comprehensive solution. That's very compelling. So thank you for being here. I really appreciate it, and I wish you the best.
Thank you, Brad.
Thank you for listening to Transform Now, the podcast from SS&C Blue Prism. You can find all of our episodes on your favorite podcast channel, as well as YouTube. To stay on top of the hottest topics in the world of intelligent automation, subscribe now. The future of work is here.